actually come to our mind? What kind of idea come to our mind when we say Northeast? Northeast, Seven Sisters state, then we have also one brother that is called Sikkim, right? And when you are talking about unified Assam, Assam was unified once upon a time, then it has broken down into different units, different territories, and all those different, like, state which has attained statehood over the period of time, as you could say, that happened to be part of Assam once. And we actually see that when you're talking about Northeast composition of Northeast is full of ethnicity, and you also see composition of Assam is different from Northeast when you're talking about the difference between the composition of Northeast and composition of Assam. And this seven sister state that unified Assam prior to independence. Later, we actually see that there are, like, demands for separate statehood, and then this demand has culminated to the creation of new states in the surrounding regions. And we also see that this leads to the formation of new states, and this has resulted regionalism. So one phenomenon which I'm going to discuss with you is regionalism. So when we're talking about regionalism, it is something which is related to that parochialness, parochial feeling, and you see which is related to that extreme sense of nationalism. You say this is a kind of micro-nationalism, which you get to see reflected in the regionalism. Okay, and regionalism is not something which is limited to Northeast. So this is one kind of, you see, aspect which you will get to see across the world. And also you get to see different varieties of regionalism, different forms and expression of regionalism in India, across India, apart from Northeast. So when you are talking about different forms and expression of regionalism across India, then we actually see that it can take form of you see interstate dispute, and that is based on border and sharing of water. And there are also certain form of dispute which are related to, you see, claimer for separate statehood. So state claimer for separate statehood, or you say that state claimer for you see full-fledged statehood. Okay, and also some demand for succession from the India, which actually gets expressed in regionalism. So when you're talking about regionalism, we actually look at those micro-national identities which actually you see, which shape the whole phenomenon of regionalism. And here, in terms of you see Northeast, we get to see there are states which are demanding for separate statehood. Okay, so when you're talking about the Northeast, you see there are Northeast consists of the 7 states, right? And we have also we have another, like, brother that is Sikkim, and there is a narrow corridor of 23, you see, 23 kilometer, and this corridor is known as chicken snake. And this chicken snake is basically, you see, it connects Northeast to mainland India, right? And that's how we could actually see that Northeast has touched a border of, you see, Myanmar, then Burma, then China, and then Bhutan and Bangladesh. And also we have people of different ethnicities who hail from, you see, this Mongoloid and Austroasiatic um, lineage. And at the same time, we could also see that we have around 220 you say tribes and 220 dialects accordingly precipitated across the region. So when you are talking about Northeast, so it is important to understand the, you see, the formation of state, even how state has been, like, formed. And this actually formed, you see, is actually formed from various kind of movements. And when we're talking about the movements, you have that insurgent movement, you have that cultural right movement, you have that movement related to demand for separate statehood, and also you have movement related to other kind of reform. You can see the social reform movement. So this variety of movement, which has also culminated or render formation of state, different state in the Northeast. So Assam is no longer unified Assam, and we get to see there's a breakdown of different state, right? So when you're talking about, you say, this is called most of the time, we call it the composition of the state of Assam. Basically, state of Assam composed of, you see, plain areas, and then hill district, and then we have northeast frontier tracts and northeastern borderland, and then we also have, when it is not a formation of the state, actually formation of Northeast, and then it actually composition is such that it constitute of northeastern borderland, it constitute of this northeastern frontier tax, it constitute of, you see, the princely state of Tripura, then princely state of you see, Manipur. Okay, so what is important here is how these states have demanded, like, statehood, and how they have attained statehood over the period of time. So now when we are looking at their attainment of statehood, we also know that Northeast is characterized by, you see, that severe human rights violation. At the same time, there was a time there is a huge massacre and ethnic cleansing happened, which are also, like, linked and connected to the various kind of insurgency and different, like, form of insurgencies across the Northeast, and as a result of which, you see, we have seen that state has, as a result of which we have seen the culmination of formation of the state. So so the entire process can be related to regionalism. So when we are talking of like, Northeast here, we are talking about the media in Northeast. So I'll move on to study of different types of media, different forms of media across the Northeast that I'll do later on. So you also need to study about the history of, you see, different form of media, different types of media at the same time. And you, although you might be aware of the fact that at times developments at different regions, like development of media in Manipur, in Nagaland, and also the current status of the media scenario in different states is quite difficult to get. Hence, first I will concentrate on media in Assam belt, and then I will move on to see in the other regions. So when I say media in Northeast, so it's not like that like, I'm concentrating only on Assam, but definitely it is quite important to know about this, like an evolution of media in Assam. So we also have you say, two major era which actually formed around the two newspaper, like we have Arunodaya and Junaki, right? Arunodaya, that journal came in 1846, and we have also Junaki that came in 1889, I guess. And around this two form of, you see, uh, newspaper or journal, we have two eras have been formed, and it continued also. So, and also there are different form of like media which have been playing a role in the development of the literary tradition in the Northeast. So, which also happens to be one important unit. As you might have gone through that syllabus, you will get to know about this. Okay. So, when we are talking about, again, we'll get back to regionalism. So, regionalism is important. Why it is important to know when you are talking about the history, geography, demography, and also when you try to look at this various, you see, um, topography, and also climatic variation in the Northeast, it is important to realize what regionalism is, because we have given emphasis to Northeast just because of the spirit and drive of regionalism. Okay, so so we are not studying the particular form of media or expression of media at another regions here. We will be very specific to Northeast, and it is the move, you see, because of which regionalism is the move, because of which we have given more and more emphasis on Northeast. Now we see that why it is important, why we're talking about regionalism, because it is also an evolving phenomenon. It is not something very new, and it has been a very old concept. It has been there since we had two power block. Once we had two power block like US and USSR. They had their own ideologies. Uh, it also related to hard power concept when there were fights for territorial expansion, and also related to, you see, national interest. Um, but when you're talking about regionalism nowadays, that was when you're talking about hard power, when you are talking about this power block, Cold War related power block, basically. Power block, Cold War related power block, when you're talking about national interest, when you're talking about, you see, the hard power, and also you talk about fixed alliances. These are very typical to regionalism, but this actually constitutes whole form of regionalism. And in the new form of regionalism, we have more of reciprocity. We see that we have more of compromise. We have more of, you see, multipolarity. So these are certain concepts which are associated with new form of regionalism, and also we have global society. Okay, so we also relate to the global society concept with regionalism, how you see the media in Northeast. Uh, Most of the time, the Northeastern are treated as a peripheral state, and how it is linked to the core state. You say core state, when you're talking about the core state, you have that mainland India. Okay, and also it established that relationship between core and periphery. Hence, regionalism, it is very, very important to understand the concept regionalism, because it actually talks about those, micro nationalities, and it is helpful even to understand the nation building process. It has contributed even to nation building process, because when you're talking about regionalism, it is also part of, you see, uh, the effort of federalism. So when you're talking about Indian federalism, so your regionalism happens to be a very important aspect, because federalism is a strategy and the method by which all the parochial loyalties, or you say this local loyalties, are being accommodated. So some local communities, the needs and interest and aspirations of those local communities are being accommodated with the help of federalism. Okay, and federalism and regionalism are two concepts which are linked together, which are associated together, which are also connected together. And Indian federalism, when we stress on the aspect of regionalism, we actually see that uh, federalism has certain aspect or elements, or you might say component are related to shared rule and self-rule. And when we are talking about the shared rule concept is basically related to general interest of this unity. And we also have another concept that is called self-rule concept. And self-rule concept is related to this particular interest of diversity. And that's how you see federalism is also attached to regionalism. So, prior to have a proper understanding about the northeastern regions, it is also important to understand regionalism. Hence, I have brought this concept to you. Uh, so, you actually see that this shared rule and the self-rule concept has actually created a balance of power situation and help to, you see, accommodate different regional loyalties. Now also we see that most of the time it is the politics which has promoted these regional loyalties, but not necessarily. When you are talking about the politics is politics promotes regionalism. So politics promotes regional loyalties, but politics doesn't create regionalism in the sense. Politics doesn't create regionalism, but at the same time, you see, politics promote regional loyalties for the benefit, for the interest of you see those who want to stay in power. And in that way, we could also see that there are certain factors which have already, you see, propelled this form of regionalism. And we also see these factors related to, you see, economic inequalities. So economic inequalities are rampant across the states in India, and on the basis of economic development, states are divided into high per capita income, then middle level per capita income countries, and low income countries, right? And we have Punjab, we have Haryana, our high per capita income. Then we have middle level per capita income, or middle income countries are there, like West Bengal, Jammu and Kashmir. And then we have low per capita income. Assam and Bihar fall under this per capita income. So you see that the development, you see there is a disparity in the development, and that disparity and that inequalities have also at times accentuate this regionalism and some parochial interest, because when you see there are economic imbalances, there are power imbalances, uneven economic development, economic inequalities that also aggravated the sense of deprivation among the people in that region, and that has also created and given rise to different form of regionalism. And here, when you're talking about regionalism, here we can get different forms and expression, like we have insurgency, right? Different forms of insurgencies are also there. And in Northeast, as I have already told you, that there are different forms of insurgencies along with other form of, you see, movement, you say the social movement, okay, movement which are based on cultural rights, movement which are based on reform, okay, and movement which are based on demand for a separate state, okay. So these are also related to insurgencies. So when you are talking about regionalism, we talk about those, you see, economic inequalities that lead to a sense of deprivation, and that further creates the uh, kind of you say sense of alienation among the people, and which has uh, culminated in different form of insurgencies and further lead to regionalism. Okay. At the same time, so we, as I have already told you, the politics has a distant, very not distinct, a distance, very distant link to regionalism. So when I say that, we see that different politicians, and you have leaders, and they prefer regionalism because it will help to create various posts, most more of the amelage, more number of ministers. Okay, so they actually exploit the regional loyalties, and in that way, politics is associated with regionalism, and that happens to be one factor. So we have factor related to economic inequality and uneven economic development, which has actually accentuated that regional feelings. And also we have another factor, and that is politics itself, and also different role of different politicians, you might say. Uh, that's how we can be very short and brief, that role of different politicians, which will lead to promote and exploit the regional loyalties, and thus promote regionalism. And it is for their advantage. More and more state will be created. There will be legislative assembly, there will be council of ministers, and there will be amalage. Like that way, that continues, that chain continues. And then we have factors related to language, that language Solvinism, that is also related to regionalism. So when we are talking about, you see, the State Reorganization Commission, and this reorganization of state, it was started in 1956 after independence, and and thereafter we could actually see there is a formation of separate state across mm, the northeast, um, in addition to formation of different other states. So when we are talking about the importance of reorganization of state, it was actually important on the basis of linguistic line. So State Reorganization Commission first recommended reorganization of state on the basis of linguistic predominance. But you see, later on, it is also related to their cultural specificity. Okay, and also it is related to other types of deprivations that usually those local and communities or different ethnic and native ethnic communities feel, for which they demanded statehood, and that has also led to regionalism. So when we're talking about Northeast, we also see that in your very first unit, we're going to discuss about this insurgency movement, and this is quite important also. Different form of insurgencies have been culminated over the period of time in the Northeast, right? And this form and varieties of insurgencies which have been culminated are related to their demand for separate statehood. As I've already told you, there are different forms and different expression of regionalism, no doubt. And there are some form of regionalism is expressed in terms of interstate rivalry over a border, you see, and this is quite common, and there is a interstate rivalry among state, even between Assam, and you see there are interstate rivalry between Assam and Arunachal Pradesh over Pasighat regions. Then interstate rivalries between you see this Assam and Nagaland over this Rangma reserve forest, right? And at the same time, there are also interstate rivalry uh, between and among states over the border territories and over other territory. Like Kasagar happened to be one area for which there has been clashes and disputes between, you see, you have this Karnataka and yeah, I think Kerala. So, and there are also one area, Balagam, which happened to be like, cause of contention between um, Karnataka and Maharashtra, I guess. So that area, Marathi-speaking people are surrounded by Kannada-speaking people, and that actually lead to interstate rivalries. So it is not something very common to Assam. So in Assam also we get to see this kind of interstate rivalries. And you see, this has culminated in different kind of insurgencies at times. So when you're talking about different form of insurgencies, we see that we have a form of insurgencies where we get to see that separatist overtone. Separatist overtone means they actually demanded for separate statehood initially. So you get to find that kind of insurgency or violence in the beginning, but later on you see they are co-opted with this Indian system. And after series of negotiation, after series of concessions, they are co-opted, and this you might say these tribes and all, they are co-opted with this Indian system. And that happened in terms of like Bodoland, in terms of Dimasa, in terms of, you see, Karbi, in terms of even Coast Rajbansi. And you see that there is a revival of statehood after 1990s, and that has culminated in the demand of Bodoland, demand of this Dimasa, Karbi, and you see, and Coast Rajbansis. And to a certain extent, their demand has been co-opted. And there are some differences also, because as you could see that when you're talking about insurgencies, in insurgencies, we have see some state which actually demand for separate statehood, and they actually want autonomy. So autonomy happens to be like, their aspirations. As autonomy happen to be their aspirations, it is easier for them, easier for state to co-opt them. At the same time, in terms of some other, you see, uh, uh, case of insurgencies, when the, like, tribe and the communities, they actually uh, uh, they actually see their approach is such that you see, this is simply a, like, insurgency, um, simply a rhetoric. It is a rhetoric in the sense that it will not continue once the demands are met. And also how, you see, how state has responded to the need. State has responded to the need by providing them various packages, and these packages may be in the form of, you see, um, various rehabilitation packages and other political packages. Okay, so here when we are talking about um, statehood, demand for statehood across the Northeast regions, or state formation in the Northeast regions, we need to look at different form of insurgencies. And these insurgencies are different in expression. You see that there are some insurgencies where there are group which work as a satellite, like they help some of the violent outfit or insurgent outfit inside the state from outside. They're helping and supporting them. So it is also known as, you see, satellite. And in case of other some form or expression of insurgencies, where we see that this insurgency started with that insurgence or violent overtone. So violence has been there, but later on through negotiation and concession, this violence has been subsided. or has been tackled by the state. And there are also other type of insurgencies when you actually see that violence, when you're talking about um, violence is there, but their aspirations a separate statehood or autonomous regions is something which is negotiable also, and violence become or insurgency become a rhetoric. So they can be easily quoted with the system. And there are also another variety or another form of or expression of insurgency, like we get to see in terms of PLA, that 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 PLA is a revolutionary group, that's a rebel in Manipur. They wanted to overthrow the system, wanted to change the system. Uh, so they did not get any help from outside also. Most of the insurgencies, or you see this, most of this kind of activities, when you're talking about the separatist activities accentuated by violence, are getting support from outside, from hostile neighbors, even the Naga people, and you see, you also have that Mizo National Front. They receive support from China, receive support from Pakistan, they receive support from even Bangladesh. When neighbors turn to be hostile, and they receive support. These insurgent outfits receive support from the neighboring countries, and accordingly, you see, they created a lot of turmoil in the land. And as they have created turmoil, there are also some measures of suppressions which have been taken by this government. And along with these very measures, we get to see that there are some countermeasures which are also taken. So, and it leads to massacre, it leads to human rights violations. So, and that has become a norms. And you see, when you're talking about the Northeast India, and Northeast India, it's simply, you see, okay. Somi Banerjee has a question, I think. Raise a hand.
Ma'am, actually, I have a small request. Can you just go a little bit slow so that I can understand?
Okay. You did not
Can you?
understand?
Yeah, I am understanding, but if you could go a little bit slow, it will be better for me.
Okay. 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 So we were discussing about insurgencies, right? So first we have discussed about regionalism, and now we have focused on insurgencies. How we have shifted our focus from regionalism to insurgencies. Will that be fine? The piece is fine? Okay. Is that regionalism itself is a phenomenon, as we have been studying. Okay, and there are also different factors which promoted regionalism, and the insurgency happened to be an outcome of regionalism, or maybe an end product, or maybe regionalism happens to be the end product of, you say, insurgency. So Northeast India, when you're talking about Northeast India has been characterized by a different insurgency movement. Okay, so you have many insurgency movement that is characterized, and it is culminated in many, many form of violence. It culminated in human rights violation, ethnic cleansing, you see, and also you say militarization of whole region, and also it has led to some covert operation, you say, and this has been related to insurgency, and partly it is related to regionalism. So I have focused on regionalism because our spirit of the course, and the very nature of the course demand to understand regionalism. What is regionalism? How regionalism can be defined? What are the factors which lead to, you say, uh, lead to culminate regionalism or even promote regionalism. So it is important. So there are different form of insurgencies when you are talking about insurgencies. So you have insurgencies related to, you see, uh, uh, satellite, some form of insurgencies which are related to like, aggression from outside, which are known as satellite. Okay. And there are also some form of insurgencies when you say that insurgency becomes a rhetoric, and you have regional aspirations which has taken as a primary focus area of the group which are into this insurgents. Okay, and in that way, you actually see that their demands, their interest could also be accommodated or co-opted with the Indian system. Now, when you are talking about insurgency, there has to be a solution, right? There has to have a solution to insurgencies. So insurgencies is very like endemic and very common in the northeast regions. Nowadays, it is not that common feature, but there was a lot of like violence once upon a time, and also we get to see that it lead to this formation of different state. So we won't talk about the unified Assam. We will talk about we will talk about Assam when it has been broken down into different state, broken down into separate state. So when we are talking about separate state, so this separate state happened to be a reality because of insurgency. Okay, so now we see that insurgency has got different forms and different expression. One is insurgency from outside, that is based on like that satellite support. And then we have an insurgency when insurgents group can be co-opted by the Indian state. So here it actually accentuated the role of Indian state. So the group can be co-opted with this Indian state. So these insurgent groups embrace a demand which can be co-opted. So through negotiation, through concession. And that also happened in case of formation of Nagaland and Mizoram. And in terms of Bodoland, you see, insurgency happened to be rhetoric, but the group demand was related to like autonomy, administrative autonomy. So it is easier for the state also to co-opt to their demand. So that's how this group have been co-opted to the Indian system. So it is more about how state has also intervened, central state, like India has intervened, even state has intervened in, or is the center has intervened in order to uh, manage insurgencies, in order to handle the insurgencies. And then we also have some form of insurgencies like insurgencies in Manipur, which actually try to alter the whole Indian system. Okay, so that is a different form of insurgency, which could not be co-opted with the Indian system. Okay, so we actually see these are different forms and varieties of insurgencies. We have also discussed about different forms and varieties of regionalism in terms of interstate dispute, in terms of like um, sharing of water, or interstate dispute based on sharing of water, interstate dispute based on some border areas, and then also we see that we have you see problem related to uh, you see inequalities. We have problem related to you see lack of job, lack of opportunities, and relative deprivations, because of which this regionalism has been culminated, and also similarly insurgency has been taken from. So when we're talking about Northeast, and so state formation is very, very important and essential aspect. And you see, when you're talking about Assam, uh, Assam was no longer unified, but we have to focus here about certain phases, how how there was a home once upon a time. It was ruled by a home. Then there is also invasion of Burmese. Then there are also, you see, like you know um, Britishers are requested even to even uh, to take help to provide some assistance, and accordingly, you see, various kind of assistance have been provided, and the Yandabu was culminated later on. Okay, so you actually see that these are this development, and I'm not going to focus on this various form of development in one class today. So, but when we're talking about the particular um, a form of regionalism in Assam, we also need to know about the history of Assam, and that is also part of study, and uh, and also we need to know about the composition of the Northeast. When you're talking about the composition of Northeast, as I have already told you, it is consist of plains, it is consist of hills, it is consist of, you see, this northeastern frontier tracts and northeastern borderland, as well as some princely state and Tripura, and you see this is called Manipur. These two are princely state, which help to define the composition of Northeast India. And we have that chicken corridor, and chicken corridor is 23-kilometer, uh, corridor, which actually connect Assam with mainland India. And you actually see our the northeast meets the border of, you see, Manipur, then you Meghalaya, then not northeast, it's like Burmese, then you Tibet, then Nepal, then Bhutan, then Bangladesh, and we also have migration and long-standing migration from Tibet, from Burma, and also from Indo-Gangetic plants. We have migrations, and also we have migration from Bangladesh. So over the period of time, and it continues, and that happens to be one factor, as you could actually see that in um, once the constitution has been promulgated in 1950. So there's a provision of sixth schedule that is basically to protect the rights of those tribal communities. Now, when you're talking about the tribe has also got a definition. Okay, that we'll discuss later. Tribe has got a definitions, and it has also described differently. Even in constitution also, this tribe has been described differently, and it has also by default made a provision that once this tribe has improved their conditions and also improved their, you see, economic status, then this special status which they are being given will be removed. So that kind of provision is also ensured in this constitution by 342 provision. At the same time, we also see that uh, in Northeast, what is important, if you have gone through this course outline, you will come to realize what you have actually got to find is that you will have to study different media, okay, and different form of media and different journals and development of press and all that will be not discussed today. So basically, I am giving an overview of Northeast with a special focus on regionalism and the insurgencies. So I will not go the detail today because there are many more classes. So if you have some questions and all, so you can ask. If you have some questions, you can ask or anything you want to know. Satabdi,
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I have this question regarding forms of insurgency, where you mentioned the first form is satellite, that I understood. But, ma'am, can you explain the second and the third form once again?
okay, when you are talking about insurgencies, so there it has also expressed in various forms and varieties. So when you say that one form is satellite and second form is related to how state intervene and help to co-opt, help to co-opt this group into the Indian state system, you know. So another form of insurgency is actually based on their demand for autonomy. They simply want administrative autonomy, suppose. Okay, and where this group can also be co-opted with the system by providing them with some kind of rehabilitation packages, some kind of political packages. So this is a kind of insurgency. So which you do not have a separate term, but this is a kind of variety or expression of insurgency, which could be co-opted with the help of little bit of negotiations or even concessions. And concession may be in the form of, you see, different political packages, and concession may be in the form of rehabilitation packages, or when the role of insurgents, or you say the rebel group, turn to be a stakeholders, you know, they are no longer considered as a rebel group, they are turned as a stakeholders. Okay, and also apart from that, we see that there is also another form of insurgency, when insurgents group are not even ready to co-opt with the system, Indian system. Even by negotiations and concessions, Indian state could not simply motivate them to co-opt with the system. In that case, insurgency, you see that, and this kind of insurgencies, you you have a tendency to continue, um, for indefinite period of time. But later on, you say state intervention has to be such that it create a kind of split, and that's what the state has been doing in case of Manipur. And because in this form of insurgency, this insurgent group tries to alter the whole system, attempt to alter the whole Indian system instead of having, you say, some aspirations or separate aspirations like autonomy, having administrative autonomy, or you see separate statehood. Separate statehood happen to be the ultimate demand, but that separate statehood uh, is not simply restricted to having administrative autonomy. Okay, when you're talking about separate statehood, it is also related to and proceed a furthermore when they try to alter the Indian system, and at the same time they're having some allies, across the mainland. Okay, so their role here in this changing the whole system, sending the arrangement, administrative arrangement, not simply demanding the administrative autonomy of the regions. So we also see that on the basis of this kind of insurgency, we have some kind of arrangement which have been made. Like in tribal areas are divided into part A and part B, and accordingly we see this Khasi and Hill, and then Garo Hill district. Then you have that Lusai Hill district. Then this Mikir Hill district. Okay, Naga Hill district. They are categorized as part A, and they are termed as administrative. They are provided with some kind of administration, which is uh, actually by this government of Assam. So administrative autonomy has been provided, and district autonomous administration, which is controlled by government of Assam. At the same time, you also have like Part B. In the Part B, you have you see uh, uh, Balipara, this track, and North is frontier track, Balipara frontier track. Then you also have Nissini Hills, like they constitute the Part B, and they are governed by Governor General under the President of India, like that way. So it is divide, and for administrative efficiency, so you actually see there is also provision of sixth schedule in order to protect the you say, um, rights of the tribes. So that is another thing. Anything else? No.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am, is there any relationship between insurgency and the security of those community who have been creating the insurgencies?
Sorry?
Is there
Insurgency,
an
security.
Yes, ma'am. Is there any relationship between insurgency and the security of those communities who have been creating this?
When you're talking about the security, see, there is a issue of national security. When you're talking about national security, the whole Northeast has a strategic importance from national security point of view. Okay, because Northeast has already touched the border of China. And when you're talking about security of the communities, the tribes, you see, security is there when you can also sense economic security, or you say that you see it is also related to their you see that the kind of sense of deprivation, sense of inequalities, and also their it is related to jobs, related to lack of job, lack of other infrastructural facilities, and also lack of uh, even share of resources, which has created a kind of like insecurities among them, and that's why they want a separate state. But at one go, definitely center or state uh, can concede their demands, and hence they resort to insurgencies. So that happened to be, you see, one kind of techniques through which they try to achieve is economic security, and also they try to achieve a balanced development, or benefit of development. So it is quite important to get the benefit of development, and also it is important to to flourish their regional aspirations. You see, cultural aspirations. And cherish their own language, cherish their own culture. Okay. So in that way, you can say that it is related to security. But when you're talking about Northeast, Northeast, the whole seven state or eight state, you say, and unified Assam have been strategically important from national security perspective, and hence you see Arunachal has also given statehood, and now we are talking about national integration. Arunachal Pradesh has given statehood, right? In And it has attained statehood in 1987, I guess. And then we see we actually that has been indicated that we take care about their aspirations. So in that way also you can relate to security aspect. Yeah. And in other way, am I addressing your queries? That's what you mean to say, security by security?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I'm got it, ma'am.
Okay.
I got it.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, on the basis of this, can we say that these insurgencies actually helping those communities are
Sorry?
so on the basis of this, ma'am, are the insurgencies helping those communities to improve their cultural experience, all
No,
those?
it is so insurgencies cannot be the solution, you know. So
Yes, ma'am.
solution to insecurities. So
Mm-hmm.
it has been, see, this has been the characteristics of northeastern regions, and insurgency, you see, has resulted this regionalism, and it has promoted that regionalism at the same time. But you cannot simply say that with the help of insurgency become this, you say, ultimate resort to get their demand. You know, you cannot simply say that. Uh,
Mm.
but yeah, without resort to insurgencies, perhaps demand for separate statehood cannot be fulfilled. So because it is the matter of like independent from, like one state or union, or even earlier you see this before, you might be aware that Nagaland even attained independence and declared independence before India got independence, right? So you know that. So it is all about their ethnic specificities. You see, it is all about their ethnicities. It is all about their cultural importance. It is about their uh, like language, importance to language, because they want to flourish their language, want to flourish their culture. And perhaps it is not the solution, but yeah, it happens that it is how they demanded for separate statehood, because it is not something which is very unique to Northeast, because in the rest of the India also, and in case of, you see, like Jharkhand, Telangana, so everywhere in Gorkha even, and yeah, even you see there are other form of insurgencies. So they have culminated, and this is in association with the demand for separate statehood.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, okay then. Yeah, Anindita has something to ask.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah.
I have a question. Is the divide and rule policy of Britishers are could be a reason of insurgency groups in Northeast India?
When you're talking about divide and rule, you actually see that we haven't actually discussed about this policy, but um, this is this colonial aspect is very important aspect, because colonial policy is based on this alienations, or it is based on this, you see, isolation. Okay, and you see, initially Assam was a part of Bengal province, right? And you also see that later on, by 1874, Assam has uh, like got got into a separate province. You also have come across that there is separate province, Assam province. Um, was created, and from 1905 to 1921 also there are some division in terms of Assam province, and which is also, it is ruled under the, like, ruled by chief commissioner, which is subordinate to lieutenant governor of Bengal. Okay, like that way. Not necessarily this insurgency is the result of, you see, British policy of isolations, or you see these alienations. Um, but yet you see that Naga club were established, and you say when Naga clubs were there, initially they had an independent status, and at that point of time, before, prior to independence, and during that period of time, they also want to retain that independent status. They don't want to be like, merge with Assam Union, and they want their independent status. And it is based on their identities. You see, these ethnic identities. They wanted to have a separate identity. So when you're talking about divide and rule policy, this is not applicable here in the different kind of insurgencies here in Assam. These are basically related to the condition of relative deprivations, and also related to the ethnic specificities, because these are the communities who want to flourish culture, their language, and they have their own tradition, own lifestyle, and they want to have a self-rule. Self-rule happens to be the concept. So in the very first section of the lectures, I have already told you that in federalism we have that concept called self-rule and the shared rule. So in Indian federalism also we have that concept called self-rule and the shared rule. And in the self-rule, so they demanded self-rule and they demanded autonomy. Actually, you see, ethnic communities actually demanded self-rule, and at the same time there is a concept of shared rule also, and which actually can take place together in a federal unity. Okay, so when you are talking about the role of British colonial policy in order to, you see, create a divide among the ethnicity, it will be wrong actually, because their role was different. Expansionism was the norms of the colonial policy. So they wanted to expand the territory. So territorial expansion was the norm of this colonial uh, administration. But as I have already told you, these insurgencies are basically this resulted out of this sense of regional parochialism, out of this economic inequalities and kind of deprivations, that they are being neglected, they are being treated. That is also kind of that may be one of a factor because of which it leads to and they also resort to insurgencies. So because they could not get their demand fulfilled by discussing across the table. And you see, in terms of Mizo insurgencies also, we actually know about Motam famine. And in Motam famine, they actually, Mijos seek help from center. They seek help from center, but did not get that much of, you see, grants and assistance in order to, you say, in order to stabilize the situation. When you are talking about the starvations, when you are talking about, you see, this destruction of crop which carried out. So which have been resulted, from this famine. They did not get this Mizo people at times, those groups did not get, although they have approached the state, they did not get that much of assistance and the grants or other help. And that has also that has made them to form a rebel group through which they can address their grievances, and they can also create a public space, and also it lead to participations. So what is important is participations. And you see, the self-rule concept is very, very important in terms of this ethnic communities, because they want to flourish their culture, their literature. So this autonomous, district, that concept, this is an administrative arrangement, and that concept has been executed already. There are some autonomous district provinces. This is actually administered by government of Assam. So and that's how we actually see there are different arrangement has been come up with by government of India in order to meet the demands and needs and interest of these various group and insurgencies. But most of the time you see this demands are being made by providing them some, you say, some packages, some relief package, not relief, rehabilitation package, or say political package like a statehood. And also at the same time, you see like government at times create some split also. There is a split in the rebuild group. Suppose like, not, I can provide you one example in Manipur. So we have Metis community, and government has also is a sponsored Kuki and Jombi community against the Metis community. Okay, so in that way, rebels group are also like made weaken and try to create a solution to this intervention. So, so we will discuss about the various causes of insurgencies later on. Today I have discussed some, and in the next class we'll discuss more. Okay. Okay then. Yeah. Okay then. You can disperse now, and if you have any questions, you can ask.